Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to what promises to be a really exciting webinar hosted by the ISE in conjunction with BPP. As some of you know, we have been running an ISE Apprenticeship Working Group since the beginning of this year, and I'm delighted to be able to showcase to you today one of our first items to be brought to you as members. It's a Return on Investment Toolkit, or ROI for ease of conversation. And today, Nicki's going to take us through some presentation slides that will give you a really good overview of what the tool does, how it can operate, and what value it can add to yourselves. And then I'm delighted that we're also joined by a couple of members who have been part of the working group and have been playing around with the tool and will be helping us take this live and giving you a really good insight into how it can be used in real life by employers as we go into the second part of the webinar. We will make sure there's time for Q&A. I'm sure there's going to be quite a bit of interest in this opportunity. Please do pop it in the Q&A rather than the chat, but I will keep an eye on the chat as well, just in case. All of the things that you see today, including the webinar and the tools, will be available on our website after today's call, and we're all on hand to help you navigate through, as this is the first time we've launched such an innovative and unique tool to our members. So please do reach out, do engage with it, and do give us our feedback afterwards in terms of how you found it. So before I turn to Nicki, I just wanted to also say thank you very much to Nicki and the team involved in creating this tool. Most of us have struggled at some point with trying to demonstrate the return on investment and the impact that apprenticeships and early careers programs will have for our organisation. We end up using blunt metrics like retention rates or completion rates. This tool really excites me personally because it brings together that data, that quantitative information, but it also gives a qualitative and a really lovely visualization of the impact and the positive success that it can bring to your organizations by having apprenticeships or having early careers programs. So I'm now going to be quiet. I'm going to hand to Nicki and I'm going to be driving the slides. So I'm going to go off camera now, but I am here. So let me know as we go.
Great, thanks, Georgia. That's really helpful. So thank you for setting the scene. Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Nicki Hay. So I'm the Director of Apprenticeship Strategy and Policy at BPP. Some of you might know me as the Chair of ALP, the Association of Employment and Learning Providers. But you'll know also I work with lots of other bodies like UCAS, Skills for Londoner. I'm on their board, and several other sort of networks and committees. So I suppose, why is that relevant? It is relevant in the development of this return on investment tool because I'm all about kind of skills and how can we support you as employers to make your job easier, and that's by bringing partnerships together, networks together. So it's not just about, you know, driving apprenticeships, boot camps, all those different funded programs as a training provider, but my role really within the organisation and generally in the sector is about bringing partnerships and networks together so we don't have duplication, and we're driving solutions for the best, you know, for the good for the sector. It's been really great to work with. We started with a wider group of employers to work on the return on investment tool, and I've been absolutely delighted with the support and working in partnership with the ISE to develop this tool, but particularly Gemma and Lorcan and Steph, who couldn't be here today, have been putting in some extra time with me and the team to really get some of the detail down. It's really important to say this won't be the answer to everything, and the tool's been developed to be really flexible. I think one of the main words that we kept saying throughout the process of developing the tool was keep it simple. Simple, adaptable, flexible. And so we've developed this tool where you can pick and choose which bits you want to use, don't want to use. And over the time, we might even develop the tool and add bits. So the idea is to get feedback from you as employers. I know Lorcan and Gemma and Steph have started to look how they're going to embed that into their business. So we're really keen to share and showcase how that's working and how that's going. I suspect what will happen is over the year we'll enhance the tool even further. So again, any feedback around things that we've missed will be really great to have from you. So really the session, we're going to run through kind of high level through some slides around how we've developed the tool, and that's we've developed it into 5 sections: salary and training, diversity, retention, learner non-achiever, and destinations, skills, and qualitative evaluation. One of the things that was really highlighted when we had the working group, that it wasn't just about data, it was about being qualitative, quantitative and evaluative in the process, and making sure it covered all of that. We'll then be having a bit of a panel discussion, and there will be a chance to have some questions and answers. We have developed alongside the return on investment tool, which is in an Excel document so that it's easy for you to use, it's easy to transfer into graphs. We've also developed a Word document, which is more of a guide giving you suggestions of where you might get certain bits of information, how you might present that, etc. So again, you know, over time, I'm pretty sure that that will develop even further. Just before we start, Georgia, if you don't mind, I'll just give you a little bit of background as to why BPP got involved in supporting in the development of this tool, mainly because we're one of the largest training providers in the country. So the number of employers that we work with, it was a common theme with a lot of the employers that we spoke with. And I think the really key thing about this return on investment tool, it's not all about apprenticeships. It actually can be used for graduates. It could be used for new staff entering your business that are not a graduate or an apprentice, that you just want to use as a tool to measure the impact of bringing new talent into your organisation, and the impact they have on the business or those business areas. BPP is, as I say, been around for over 10 years delivering apprenticeships. We deliver 45 different apprenticeship standards from level 2 up to degree level. The main part of our business is really focusing on workforce planning and people development, working with you as employers to address those with solutions through the variety of programs that we offer. And part of our remit is also to work with you about future-proofing skills for the future. 90% of our employers say their people acquire the right skills through the programs that we offer, and 88% of our apprentices say they have a valuable contribution to the workplace as a result of the programs that we offer. So if you don't mind moving to the next slide, Georgia, just around technology, we've really boosted our organisation in the last 2 years with the acquisition of SDO Firebrand, and more recently Digital Marketing Institute. Why have we done that? Because the employers that we work with recognise that digital software, AI, are real challenges for the future, where there's big skills gaps. So in responding to our employers and supporting their needs, we've enhanced our offer as an organisation to provide those solutions. And you can see there that we're heavily involved in cyber, data analytics, IT cloud software and digital, and IT is big on our agenda now. So that is why we've sort of got into the space of developing this tool. We think probably this ROI tool at some stage we might turn into some sort of digital app that you might be able to use, but this is first stages. My research and data team will be panicking like anything. Now I've just announced that, but I'm pretty sure with ISE and the employers we're working with, we'll probably move the ROI tool to a dashboard within your organisation, working with your data people, and then moving it more into kind of some sort of app at some stage. Okay, so let's get on to what the ROI tool is all about. As I said, we wanted to focus around qualitative and quantitative information And we know that if we only focus just on data, you can have holes in that data. So we wanted to make sure that we looked at both sides. So you know, what have we included around quantitative information within the tool? So we've looked at metrics, KPIs, calculations. So we've included salary, training costs, productivity, learner and manager surveys. We've with scale point questions, we've looked at skills and capability surveys, retention, leaver, non-achievers, so individuals exiting your organisation, and also destinations. And then from a qualitative perspective, we're really sort of focusing on the value of apprenticeships and or graduate programmes, and what that feedback looks like. So apprenticeship business cases, with the impact on your CSR, awards, accreditations, where you might sit within the top 100 employers, rate my apprenticeship. So we've really looked at how we can pull this tool together to balance that qualitative and quantitative information. If you don't mind moving on to the next slide for me, Georgia, great. So we started off by looking at the 5 key areas. So salary, training, diversity, retention, learner, non-achiever, and destinations, and then skills and qualitative evaluation. So let's take you on a tour through those 5 key areas. So let's start with salary and training. So we looked at salary, employee salary on an annual basis, which includes and is broken down into apprenticeship and existing staff. Also looking at the start of the apprenticeship and 1 year on. We've included plenty of benchmark data also. Now, the great thing about this tool is actually, if you wanted to, you could add a line in relation to graduates as well. And you could also add a line in for those new employees that you just want to bring into the business. We've used this section really to compare costs with a measure of value. So and to enable you to really kind of look at a single figure that tells you what that return of investment on the apprentice, but also we wanted to make sure we pointed out certain costs that you might not have picked up. So we know the training cost from an apprenticeship, for example, is covered by the funding band, whereas compared to a new employee where you might pick up the cost directly as an employer. But also around national insurance. So again, it's important to pick up the costs. If you've got any apprentice under the age of 25, it's important that the national insurance relaxation that you get, again, it's really important that you pick that up and you can demonstrate that in your return on investment. And often, you know, more recently, I've spoken to a few employers that have actually been having a look at this return on investment tool and actually didn't realise that they had some relaxation over national insurance for under 25s. So already they've kind of got a return on investment just by looking at the tool in saving, and that cost can be demonstrated into any business case that you want to make back into the organisation. We've also covered other costs in there, so you can pick up if you're doing anything up and above the apprenticeship or the graduate programme, costs that aren't already embedded. So if you're doing some additional, you might bring in some external organisations to do some training with different cohorts of apprentices that are more specific to your organisation. So again, you've got an opportunity to pick those costs up. If you're having a mentoring, coaching programme internally, again, you can put a cost to it if that works for you. Great, thanks, Georgia. Again, what we've included in the ROI tool is a way to present data. So we've also, when you look at the Excel document, you'll be able to use all the different tables, and we've given you examples of how you might present the data back into your business and how you might want that to look like. Then moving on to diversity. So I think diversity was probably one of our biggest areas and one of our areas that we really had a lot of conversation. And I think around diversity, the biggest discussion was around consistency of data and information, and actually what you want to collect as an organization. And actually in the working group, we started off with the standard measures that you would have in place around gender, ethnicity, social economic diversity, disability, and social orientation. But quite quickly, we realised that there were a lot more areas that we wanted to cover in this area. And also what we've included in here is some national benchmark data. Now, again, some of the challenges might be for you as an employer that you want to think about. You might not collect all of this data. And when we go into the tool, you'll see that we've broken down all of the gender, ethnicity, and disability and sexual orientation. We've really broken down into some more areas. And it might be for your existing staff, you don't actually collect that data, and you might only collect it for your apprentices and your grads, but that's okay. One of the ways that you can measure how you're performing as an organisation is through the benchmark data. So we've put some national benchmark data in there so you can still do a comparison. But also, if you aren't collecting that data for existing staff, maybe this tool might make you think about, actually, do we want to collect some of this information, and do we want to start setting some benchmark data using our existing staff or incoming new staff if you're only going to introduce it to new individuals coming into your business, but also, you know, if you are capturing it for your apprentices and graduates, and then you can start to compare to see how you're widening diversity, for example. The national data that we'll be using, you'll be pleased to know we'll be working with the ISE to make sure we update that on a yearly basis. And so you'll be going back onto the website, you'll be getting a notification from ISE to say we've updated the toolkit so that you've always got the latest version. Great, thanks, Georgia. The next tab that we've inserted into the tool was around, and again, we had quite as a working group, we had a really long conversation around this, around retention, learn and non-achiever. So, you know, looking at those apprentices that don't complete, or graduates that don't complete the programme that you have in place, and destinations. And again, we looked at a period, so at 12 months, 1 year, and 3 years. We thought it was really important to go back and really visit where your grads or apprentices are in 3 years' time if they're on a shorter program. Some of your programs might actually go beyond that. I know, for example, the solicitor's apprenticeship is about 6 years. So all you would do with the return on investment tool is change at what point you would revisit post completion of the program. So the tool is very adaptable to meet your needs. Achievement is an easy one. You know, all those apprentices, for example, that achieved the program. And I talked about the destinations. Now, the destinations is really important because it's not just about destinations as, are they still in the business? Have they resigned? Have they gone somewhere else? It's also about, have they been promoted? Where is their salary band sitting now? Have they moved sideways and up through the organisation? Have they been promoted up? What speed have they been promoted up through the organisation? The other area that we looked at is how long dwell time, how long before, you know, maybe grads or apprentices, how long before they get promoted. So how long are they in your organisations following completion before they get promoted up through your organisation? Great. The one that I was very excited about was the skills area. So I think this is really exciting. So we were talking about how could we measure the impact of the teaching and learning very quickly and easily to help you to develop some data back into your organisation that really shows the impact that an apprenticeship programme or a structured graduate programme might bring to your organisation, particularly for new entrants coming in. And so we thought, well, how can we go about this? So some of the ideas that we had around this is if you've worked with me around onboarding and emerging talent coming into your organization, you know I'm really passionate about when you're talking to those business areas in your organization that say, yeah, we'd love grads or apprentices in this area, we'd love our apprentices to do a program. I'm always kind of, okay, that's really great. So what would the measures of success look like for that department? What, at the end of the apprenticeship program, what are you hoping to achieve from a skills perspective in your business area? And so we wanted to try and put a bit of a measure to that. So what we've said is at the start of the apprenticeship, those departments that you're working with and those line managers that you're working with around introducing graduate schemes, apprenticeship schemes, it'd be great to identify maybe 3, 4 or 5, probably no more than 5, key skills that you want that individual to have at the end of the programme. And then the next point would be, well, where is that starting point for that individual? How can we measure their starting point to the end of their programme? So we thought we could develop just a couple of pulse surveys to help ask and quiz the line manager on those on that journey of developing those skills. So one of the things that we thought about is developing a pulse survey that the line manager can do really quickly, either on an app or through Microsoft Forms, that literally when the apprentice starts, that you're working with your training provider to say, okay, where are their skill levels against these 3, 4 or 5 skills that we've identified? Where's their starting point? And then maybe either 3 months or 6 months later, it's getting the line manager to quickly go on and just measure where that learner is against those 5 or 3 or 4 skills that you've identified. And that should show you the journey from the day their starting point to where they are with those skills at 3 months or 6 months. Now, this is an area that you could actually work with your training provider to say, actually, when you're carrying out the progress reviews with the line manager, the apprentice and yourself, could you just do this quick pulse survey to help me gather some data against these 3, 5 key skills that we're measuring this apprentice or this graduate's journey with. And then if you've got it in something like Microsoft Forms, you can just transfer that data into some graphs to demonstrate how they're developing those skills. Now, if you were looking at comparing it to a graduate, you would just do the exactly same pulse surveys. If you were comparing it to existing staff, we would probably just say to the line manager, just across all of the sort of general level where your apprentices or graduates are aspiring to be, can you just give us a general picture of where those skills levels are against these 3, 4, 5 skills that we've identified, and just do that more as a generalist across the whole population of that level in that department, and then you can just have a bit of a comparison. So again, we can talk about that a bit more with Lorcan and Gemma when we get to that part of the tool. And then finally, coming down to the qualitative evaluation. So we looked at business cases, CSR outcomes and awards. And again, we've set this up so that every time you have your meeting, maybe with your training provider, that might be your sort of strategic meeting that you might have maybe on a quarterly basis, it's just bring the toolkit up and maybe in the boxes just from your training provider who's on the ground talking to your line managers, make sure they're feeding back to you any great stories, successes that they're hearing from the grads or their apprentices, and you can just literally jot some notes into the toolkit that we've developed that we'll show you in just a moment, and then it's captured. And then later on, you know, if you're a few months off, maybe producing some exec summaries for the business, you can just pop back into your toolkit, look at all the success stories that you've got in there. You can also populate any internal recognitions that you run internally. You might have awards that you're going for, so national apprenticeship awards, for example. So you might say you've kind of entered several apprentices into those awards and they've been shortlisted. So there's loads of ways that you can use the business case, the CSR outcome, and the awards. We'll go into a bit more detail when you look at the toolkit in a moment. Lovely. So that is just a high level whistle stop tour of what actually the tool looks like. I think once you actually, and we bring the toolkit up and we bring in Lorcan and Gemma and Georgia into the conversation, it will come much more alive. But I think it was really important just to give you the basics of how we've broken it down into those 5 areas, and what those 5 areas mean. And then when you see the toolkit, it'll come alive. So it will be available on the ISE website. There will be guidance and this recording. You're more than welcome to contact me if you're trying to implement it into your organisation and you would like some support to talk about the tool. And I know also the ISE are available to support as well. We will probably look to host another review of how the toolkit is going and showcase some organisations on how they're using it in about 6 months' time. And also we might have some new updates potentially for the toolkit. So, and as I mentioned previously, any benchmarking data, we will be reviewing that on an annual basis for you. So I think I'm going to hand back over to Georgia as we move now into bringing it all alive for you.
Thank you so much, Nicki. Hi, everyone. So really a great pleasure to follow on from Nicki's presentation there to introduce you to Gemma and Lorcan, who have been actively involved in the development of the tool and are going to talk us a little bit through their experiences and the bits that they're particularly proud of as we go into this next part of the sessions. So Gemma and Lorcan, would you like to introduce yourselves, and I can bring up the tool as we go through into the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Georgia, and thanks again, Nicki, Georgia, and the ISE for putting this project together. It's been really enjoyable just to sort of see it come to this stage. So really exciting. So hi everybody. My name's Lorcan. I'm the apprentice manager for Irwin Mitchell. I've been here nearly around 2.5 years, but I've been involved in early talent for around the last 20 years.
And hi everyone, I'm Gemma Fowle. I'm at Novuna. I'm the early careers manager at Novuna, and I'm really new to this space. So in March next year, I'll be coming up to 2 years in early careers. But previous to that, I was in the talent acquisition field. So early careers is not just new to me, but it's a new concept at Novuna as well. So yeah, that's me. Also delighted to be part of this. So thanks for having me.
No, thank you both so much. So hopefully everyone can now see on the screen as well. This is the Excel workbook that Nicki was talking about earlier. Potentially going to be an app. That's really exciting. I won't keep saying that, Nicki. Don't worry. I can imagine you're getting IMs from your BPP colleagues as we speak, that you've broken this news live on the webinar. So what you can see at the bottom here is several different tabs. They're correlated to what Nicki was talking about a minute ago. So I'm going to ask Gemma and Lorcan, please, can you just give us a little bit more about kind of the tool, how you might use it, and direct me as you wish, and we'll go into the different tabs and we can showcase it a little bit more and bring it to life. Okay,
do you want me to start, Nicki, Georgia, if that's okay?
Super, yeah. Please.
Okay, so again, hi everybody. I think the first thing I wanted to say was certainly I've been trying to get a robust set of ROI data probably for the last 20 years for a number of different employers, and certainly when I've been engaging with other people in peers in other organizations, one person's version of ROI is very different to another. So it's just great to see that hopefully you'll soon start to see yourself that this at least sort of forms a common platform for achieving that consistency that hopefully you'll all really enjoy moving sort of further forwards. Before I sort of move on to this, just a few key tips that I've sort of put together. So I've not started this tool yet in fully. So I've been sort of using some ROI metrics myself, just from, I suppose, my experience. So I'm really keen, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to join this activity, really keen to put this tool to its fullest, use for the benefits of our business. But just some tips before I move on. I think it's really important that as a business that you clearly define what your objectives are, because if you don't obviously have these, it can lead to inconsistent measurements. And given that, we're all striving to obviously get meaningful MI and meaningful ROI, if you don't have this, it can hinder your ability to demonstrate the impact of your overall strategy. I think the second important thing is that you need to have adequate data collection. So be really clear on where you can establish, the data requirements and sources from. And this is from the very outset. And try and obtain, as Nicki alluded to, both qualitative and quantitative data covering your key KPIs. This obviously then provides a more comprehensive understanding of your own strategy's impact on employee engagement, for instance, satisfaction, and sometimes if you're measuring the overall organizational culture. Make sure then you also include direct and indirect costs. So you look at things like opportunity costs. So what is being sort of almost forfeited if you've got graduates or apprentices working on something else. The other thing is around long-termism. I think it's really important. I've just been in with Mitchell now for just over 2.5 years. And whilst I've been able to sort of work with some metrics, I've obviously wanted to make sure that my strategy is not just about short-termist results and wins. I've needed to recognize that to look at the full impact of my strategy, it can take a little bit longer to materialize. And some benefits like enhanced retention and advancement can obviously take longer to see. Also, make sure that you use appropriate benchmarks. Compare your stats against industry benchmarks. And I know Nicki has already alluded to the fact that there is lots out there. There's lots obviously integrated into this tool. But as members of the ISE, make sure you use them. They've got some fantastic sort of sources of data. So I'd very much recommend that you do that as well. Because again, without this, it's difficult to challenge your strategy's success or areas for improvement. Also involve all relevant stakeholders. Some of you may be one-man bands, one-person bands, etc. You're not as big as some of those macro firms out there. So really sort of think about using your allies in HR, data teams, or your MI teams for support. Because what this can also mean is that you don't overlook critical aspects in order to measure your strategy's success. And I think one final note I'd like to make is just think about adjusting your strategy. Sometimes you become fixated where, right, I'm going to set this strategy for 2 years and we're going to sort of monitor it. But if something isn't working, or like we see very sort of frequently now, the business takes a change in, I don't know, strategic direction or something like that, really think about reviewing your strategy. If it's not yielding the results, then it may again hinder your scheme's long-term success. So those are just a few key statements that I really just wanted to sort of highlight that might help you when you're sort of looking at ROI, whether that be for the first time or to build on what you've done in the past. So in terms of some of the KPIs when I started, I wanted to look at, our target very much is around attracting, training and retaining the best talent to help future-proof Irwin Mitchell's business aspirations. So for me, the immediate ones that I wanted to look at in terms of KPIs were around levy spend, our EDI data. Our EDI ambitions are very much linked to our strategic objectives, as we recognize people who come to work as their full self can hopefully be truly authentic. And hopefully you'll agree that happy staff tends to mean more productive workforces. So that was one of the things we definitely wanted to look at as well. Obviously looking at the retention aspect as well. And when you think, since I've been in with Mitchell as an apprentice manager, we've increased our number of programs from 3 to 23 programs. So again, heading in the right direction. So ways that I've conducted ROI up to now is I've started to look now at apprenticeship completion, but again, with this tool, spending a lot more time and focus and energy looking at non-achiever rates and definitely using more so those industry norm data sort of points as well. Looking at levy usage and also expired levy costs as well. Please remember, if you're a levy paying employer, if you don't use your levy within 2 years, then you lose it. It goes back to Treasury. So please remember that. Also, you know, I want to be looking at sort of our apprentice ROI versus maybe our graduate sort of ROI, because what this might mean is that, you know, things are happening in the graduate space that we might want to replicate within the apprentice space, or vice versa. Or there might be things that we think, do you know what, maybe we should merge activities, that type of thing, because again, it's all about doing what's right for your business in the most cost-effective way as well. I think Nicki mentioned again national insurance. You know, I've just done a recent exercise where we've saved the business over £100,000, and that's bottom line cost. That's bottom line savings to our business, and it's things like that that really sort of, you know, pricks the ears up of those really important stakeholders like your finance directors, etc. We also have a great places to work survey. So again, we're using this. I'm going to be using this to conduct some internal benchmarking sessions, measuring and comparing colleague engagement. Really excited about that one. The other things I'm going to be doing is looking at the awards and industry benchmarks. We pay particular sort of interest to the Rate My Apprenticeship rankings, because what's most important to us is that's where our own apprentices submit reviews based on their own experiences. So again, just be mindful of what sort of things are out there that again meet your business objectives. We also do, as a team, biannual surveys to all our apprentice participants, apprentices and managers. Obviously, what that allows us to obtain is that qualitative data as well as the quantitative data. Now, in terms of going forwards, I'm going to be looking at costs associated with the apprenticeship program. So looking at monthly one-to-ones, the times that obviously our managers spend with our apprentices, that time off the job, and any related training courses. But if you look at the first tab there, you can see there there's some really important sort of, I suppose, formats there. And I think for me, I'm going to be using this to do a comparison for graduates. Generally, they come in on a higher salary for certain parts of our business. And my business, again, is very much sort of enjoying, you know, hearing that bottom line cost of saving of £100,000. It's my boss herself who taught me something really important, that deal with you know, facts rather than opinion when you're looking at sort of finance. So again, just a really easy measure to obtain as well from payroll generally. If you're looking now at the second tab for me, Georgia, around diversity, I alluded to the fact earlier that EDI is a really important sort of objective for ourselves. Now, we use a lot of training providers, and for a lot of those training providers, they undertake our front-end screening. So again, I want to be getting a lot closer to the detail, and for a lot of the roles that we recruit to for apprentices, we have it in-house and we use our own ATS system, and we have a very good you know, metrics and data source information for that. And just a tip, really, just making sure now that I'm going to be partnering again with our training providers to make sure that they can mirror that data metric for us as much as possible, because again, you know, the data is really, really important when you're trying to influence your stakeholders. The next one, retention.
Lorcan, sorry,
okay.
just before we jump on, I just wanted to explain to the audience, there is so much on each of these tabs that I'm trying to fit it into a screen which you can still see as Lorcan's describing what's on each one of them, but there is a lot, as you can see, particularly on this diversity tab. So when you do get a chance to play around directly, as Nicki had also said at the beginning, you've got your data side, but you've also got that visualization side. So please do feel free to kind of scroll around. If there's things that you see today on the call and then you get your hands on it, feel free to move around, because you might miss some details otherwise. Sorry, Lorcan, I just thought I'd better explain why I'm trying to
no problem.
showcase the whole screen.
Georgia, Lorcan, can I just quickly say also, we've used the Social Mobility Commission Toolkit. So we've used that data, which we've incorporated. So it was just to say all of that finer detail. So we're keeping consistency, and it means it allows us a better way to measure it nationally.
Okay, Thank you, Georgia.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Nicki.
Thank you.
I'm also going to be looking at sort of the destination data, both sort of like from a promotional aspect, but also lateral movements as well. Looking at how the apprentice performance data and destination data compares to other types of profile of individuals we recruit to our business. Hopefully this will allow us to look at how apprentices are X percentage more likely to get promoted, so we can tie figures into this around sort of cost of recruitment, for example. My personal view is that a robust apprenticeship program should not just help attract excellent apprentices, but obviously it's also about retaining and promoting as well. The next one around skills, again, it can often be the one that takes the longest. I think it's a really, really valid tool. And I think the thing I just wanted to, again, probably remind people on this call, and also people who listen to it later, was something Nicki alluded to, is if you're not close with your training providers, they normally have at least sort of every quarter the skills sort of profiler updates or meetings with their apprentices, and that allows them to look at how much competence has been built or enhanced within each of those knowledge, skills and behaviours, really, for each of those apprenticeship programs. So very much use your training providers, and it saves you duplicating that task, and that obviously helps you then obtain that data that can be really, really beneficial. On the evaluation piece now, Georgia, I am nearly done. Sorry, Gemma, I will come over to you shortly. We do a biannual colleague survey. We also benchmark feedback for managers and apprentices. This is really, really important because it just adds context and it gives people a voice as well. What I'm really also keen to make sure I do is that I share the results, even if it's constructive or positive. Obviously, that's what we like to see as well. I make sure that I share the concerns, make sure I share the successes. And this is what I'm sort of working on, making sure that we've got some really robust data and we communicate it accordingly, and we communicate what things we're going to be doing as a result of, undertaking exercises like this. Just some final tips, really, that it's wise to partner with internal groups, people like payroll, data, etc., to make sure then this isn't just a job for you and HR. Make sure that you can partner with your CSR teams. They can often be really good influencers as well. And I think just from this tool perspective, please give it a go. You might see it as a phase one where you might identify with your key stakeholders. What are the key drivers for you? Is that bottom line cost? Is it around DDI data? And then thinking of a phase two, you might have further sessions then, like Nicki alluded to, in 3 to 6 months' time with your stakeholders to think, right, we've got phase one data. What sort of things would you like to include for phase two? But I hope that was useful. I'm really excited to sort of get going on this tool. And I'm now going to hand over to you, Gemma. So thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, Lorcan.
Yeah, thanks, Lorcan. I just wanted to echo the excitement for getting involved in this tool. I mean, one of my main reasons for getting involved is I was actually looking at this on my own at Novuna, and then it just coincided with the work that Nicki was doing in the working group. So yeah, I was super excited to get involved in it. But I echo what Lorcan said in terms of connecting it to your early careers strategy. So I've got the lens on it of not just from apprenticeships, but obviously we've got graduate programs as well. And so I've got, a few pillars on my early career strategy, and under each of those pillars, there are the strategic intents. But furthermore than that, there is the measurements of success. And it's a set of key questions and data points that I'm looking to answer as part of that early career strategy. And also as well, like, this is really building a business case, as to why we should continue with early careers. Because in our year one, we went from like 0 to 40 people on program in the first year. And then in the second year of early careers, my early careers programs was put on hold. So this was a big chunk of work for me to just think about, how can I demonstrate the return on investment from that successful first year, and be able to make sure that we continue driving that moving forward. So there was a few things that I looked at. I certainly can relate a lot of it to this tool. So, I was able to demonstrate that our 18 to 24-year-olds at Novuna were the most diverse compared to other age groups within the business. And so although we don't currently collate socioeconomic data as standard at Novuna, we have run a social mobility program, and was able to demonstrate that we saw an 8% increase in ethnic diversity by having that socioeconomic program. So really kind of showcasing the power of that intersectionality. I've also used the retention aspect of this tool. So I was able to demonstrate that we're 7% above industry standard for our graduate program and 14% above industry standard for the apprentice program. And I think the reason to not just showcase what our retention is as a whole, but to actually use the power of the, the ISE data, to Lorcan's point earlier, is a real boost for us to be able to be like, oh, actually, we're performing, above industry standard. So that was really cool. One interesting aspect of that actually was to overlay the diversity data on our attrition, because although the numbers are quite small for us, I have already noticed that our few leavers happen to be within minority groups. So that's something that, because of having this pack and going through all of this data, is something that I'll be keeping a really close watch on, just in case it turns into a trend. I've used the destination section as well. So we call that internal mobility, but just showcasing the journey beyond program. So looking at one of our first programs that we did, Game Changers, that was a social mobility program, and been able to showcase that 36% of them have been promoted or moved internally. So that was definitely a really good data point to use. We've also looked at performance data as well. So haven't necessarily touched on that throughout the tool, but I guess it could fall into maybe that qualitative evaluation, but the promotions, the performance data sort of showed that 40% of our apprentices and graduates were either achieving a strong or an extraordinary rating, which is our top 2 ratings. So that was good. But whilst we are on qualitative evaluation, at Novuna, I included volunteering day as part of the program experience. So that supports our CSR initiatives. But not only that, it obviously gives back to the communities. It's also an opportunity for the cohort to come together in person, because all of our apprentices and graduates are located in different areas of the UK. But by having that volunteering day as part of the programme, we saw a 25% increase in our volunteering dates taken last financial year. So all of our employees get a volunteering day as standard. And yeah, that led to a 25% increase. So it just shows how interconnected some of the other spaces are, which is cool. And it also, as well, from a CSR perspective, the types of volunteering that we did also supported the SDGs, so the Sustainable Development Goals. And that was, for us in particular, it was life on land and life below water as well. Like we didn't go scuba diving or anything, it was plastic fishing, but yeah, life below water. So it just shows you how you can connect it to a few different CSR pieces. But to Lorcan's point earlier, he mentioned levy gifting. That's something that I'm looking at moving forward too, and how we can better utilise that, because that's not something that we're doing right now. But again, that would be another strand of return on investment. We've also had some awards as well, so I included that in the pack. So use quite a few areas of the tool, and I think obviously this is a great tool to utilise to bring everything together. But then it was like, how do you then present that as a business case back to the business? And so obviously pulled it into a PowerPoint and moved some of our qualitative data into like a video. So got the hiring managers to kind of give their feedback and record themselves doing it, and turned that our internal comms team sort of did their magic and turned that into a video, which could be included in the pack. So it was a good tool to follow and be able to bring a pack together to showcase to the business.
Wow, brilliant. Thank you, Gemma, and to Lorcan for bringing that to life for us. And it sounds like already starting to get involved with it, even though it hasn't really officially launched until today. So even better to have some real life examples of how you've been using it. We've got about 10 minutes left now, so I'm going to say to the audience, if anyone has any questions, please do pop them in the Q&A or the chat. And while you're maybe having a think about your questions, I'm going to pose a couple to Lorcan and Gemma and Nicki just to start the conversation. So Lorcan and Gemma, you both spoke there a little bit about kind of starting to use it with your business, but which aspects would you say are probably the most valuable from a business stakeholder perspective within the tool, or which ones were you really excited about because you think that will really help me have that business discussion? Be lovely to hear a bit about that from you both.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first if that's okay, Lorcan. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So from a business case perspective, I mean, we're going into a stage where headcount, costs, all of that's being looked at the moment. I'm sure I'm not alone, and I'm sure there's other members that are experiencing that right now. And so one of the interesting things that I started looking at was time to competence. So a lot of the things that I was hearing was that, you know, I have limited headcount. You know, why would I use that limited headcount to take on an early careers hire as opposed to an experienced hire? And so I reached out to 38 line managers to gather their feedback on how quickly their graduates and apprentices were coming up to speed by asking how much of their role profile they were executing at a 6-month probation period. And the majority said that 80% of their role profile was being executed at 6 months. And most of the managers said that they'd expect an experienced hire to be doing about 100% of that. And so there's a 20% gap, which is A, less than expected, and B, kind of gives an opportunity to figure out how we can close that gap between an early careers and experienced hire. That's the general concept. I obviously now I know from this tool is that we've got the skills section to really support that. And so I'd really be looking to kind of enhance that, because at the moment it's just, you know, what managers are saying in terms of how they're feeling their apprentice and graduate is going on. So having the skills section now in this tool is going to be really powerful, because I think it just gives some more data to back up the skills that we're getting in that kind of time to competence period. And I think the for another business case purpose, the attrition data was quite important for me to be looking at, because at Novuna, we're working towards coming in line with working population demographics for those aged 16 to 24. And that demographic happens to be 11%. And we're at 9% at the moment at Novuna. So yes, and looking at the attrition data meant that I've been able to showcase that if we saw a similar level of attrition as we did last financial year, we'll actually see our 16 to 24 age range decrease from 9% to 8%. So by having a look at that, again, it was able to demonstrate to the business, look, if we don't continue with early careers programs, we're going to see that dip. So that was like a couple of things that really helped me with my business case.
Thanks, Gemma. And
Thanks,
I've just
Gemma.
dropped on the screen just so that people can see, because personally, I love the visualization of this data as well. And I know a lot of my stakeholders in my company also love to see it as well as hear and read the numbers. So sorry, Lorcan, please go on.
Yeah, no problem. So I think for me, obviously, I was fortunate because it means obviously I'm employed by Irwin Mitchell, but somebody somewhere, I think it came from the finance director, who was seeing that an awful lot of our levy was just not being spent. And if you think about, since I joined, we were at 18% of our levy spend. Now we're just this month, actually, for the first time, over 60% anticipated spend for the next 12 months. So we've still got a little bit of, work to do on that one, but at least we're moving in the right sort of direction. I think for me, one of the first things was we need to have a stronger apprentice sort of proposition. We're fortunate in Irwin Mitchell, we've got 17 sites around the country, and 3 of our key sort of strategic pillars are clients, colleagues, and communities. So it's very much in my ethos that we have as many opportunities to recruit apprentices and graduates from their local communities. So they're not forced or pressurized to move to London, etc. They can very much sort of continue to work within their local communities. So that was very much sort of like, I think something that our stakeholders were really keen on maintaining. The other things are obviously levy spend, as I alluded to, but the other things that we were looking at were around, what was coming out from our Great Places to Work surveys, and probably like a lot of other companies, training, development, lack of progression, lack of skills, sort of upskilling really is quite common, probably one of the highest negative scores that we're used to getting. So I'm certainly not sitting here saying apprenticeships are the full panacea, they've cured absolutely everything, but certainly apprenticeships for us has helped. Since I started, our apprenticeship sort of makeup has been we've had anything between sort of 20 and 120 people on program, and a constant 36 to 45% of our apprenticeship makeup is from my internal colleagues who are using apprentices to upskill, which is absolutely fantastic. And the business do really enjoy seeing that month-on-month sort of figure being maintained. EDI, as I mentioned, that's something that's really, really important to us. within the legal sort of arena, we're used to sort of people coming in with law degrees, and because there's only a finite number of training contracts available, we're used to seeing paralegals come and go. So obviously those people who aren't unfortunately successful in securing training contracts, then we see quite a high level of attrition. But what apprenticeships has allowed us to do is, again, to have those very similar programs where people can come either at 16 or 18 years of age, join us and literally stay. And what's nice about the legal arena is that there's a nice, well, there's probably a very varied route of pathways to become qualified solicitors now, which is extremely exciting. And obviously, you know, that's what's enabling us to really sort of bolster up our sort of apprenticeship programs. So yeah, I think that's my answer to that. I hope that's okay, Georgia.
No, that's great. Thank you, Gemma and Lorcan. I think we've probably got time for. Sorry, go on, Nicki.
Can I
please.
just add something? Because I also think the tool. So you know, where I started at the beginning, I think you can use it to what extent really helps your business, but also you could just use it as a checklist working with your training provider on, say, for example, apprenticeships, to help maybe feed in some measures of success that you want your provider to report on. So you don't necessarily have to actually implement it into your own organization under your own instruction, collecting all the data. You could use it as a bit of a checklist to say, actually, you know, BPP, we'd quite like you to collect this data, and these are the 5 areas that we'd quite like you to help us demonstrate success of the apprenticeship program. The data that we've put into the toolkit, some of it is just made up data. So when you look at all the graphs and things, we needed some data in there. So please, when you all look at it, apart from the national data and the ISE data, we've populated it. And if you look at the skills, the 5 skills that we've listed, that was just talking about someone that might be working in a sort of data analyst type role. So we listed those 5 skills. Obviously, they would be different from individual to individual, department to department. So it was just to point out that as well.
Yeah. I was just going to really quickly add one more really quick thing, if that was okay, Georgia, sorry.
Please.
And it was just, obviously we all know like how our stakeholders like to receive information, but one thing that seems to really work at Novuna is all of our stakeholders are spread across different business units, and so there's this element of competitiveness. And so actually, although it's like looking at all of this data for the organization as a whole, to filter it down even further so that you can actually showcase which department seems to be doing slightly better, was quite a powerful move as well. So just wanted to really quickly share that.
No, that's a really good point, and also thank you, Nicki, as well. So what we're saying really is that this tool is agile, it's adaptable, you can pick and choose the bits that work best for you. You can drill down into further detail, as Gemma says, in terms of getting to the teams or the units within your organization and being able to compare and contrast. But you can also just use it as that very top level checklist to check that things are working and you've got those metrics with your training provider in place, so you both feel confident in terms of how you're measuring the activities and the outcomes for your apprentices. Super. Thank you so much for bringing that to life for us. I've got one last question, and then I think unfortunately we're going to have to close for this session. And the question was really about data. Now, of course, everything we're talking about is about data, and I think all 3 of you have said a little bit about how the data can and doesn't have to all be collected or collected in the same way. But obviously, there's probably quite a few people sitting out there thinking, I don't even know where to start. And, you know, what experiences could you share, maybe Gemma and Lorcan from your employer perspective, but also Nicki from your BPP and ROI tool development perspectives about the data side of things, and maybe a few top tips just to leave everyone with in terms of that. If there's anyone sitting there worrying that this looks great, but I have no idea how I'm ever going to get the data in it.
Yeah, I think for me, Georgia, it's obviously, again, plug in the ISE. I know I am so few sort
Feel
of
free.
green ticks for that. But again, use people like the ISE, especially if there's people on the call or who are listening to the recording who aren't familiar with this. You know, there are people who can support you. Okay. I think the other thing is to say, use those experts within your business area. So for me, I have a very good partnership with our CSR, our responsible business teams, and also our MI teams as well. They can do amazing things with data that I didn't even think was possible. And again, it's not just an isolated sort of mission here. Really sort of try and forge those great partnerships with again, those internal colleagues and those internal networks, but also with the external networks as well. And hopefully by combining sort of that effort, you can hopefully have for a phase one, a really robust piece of MI to go back to your business areas with.
Yeah, well, I echo what Lorcan says around the relationships, but also I happen to have access to some of our HR systems, so it's quite easy for me to dip in and out of those. So although I can utilize those specific teams, I can also dip in and out of it myself and kind of play around with things, which is really cool. Yeah, so I think that's probably it, actually, is just utilizing the systems the best you can and making the most of them and leveraging those relationships. And for me, it would be looking at a lot of it was like quite manual in terms of digging in and all of these different systems and bringing it together. In the future, I hope there'll be a place where I can look at how we automate that, maybe through something like Power BI or that app that Nicki mentioned earlier, although we shouldn't be talking about that too much, but yeah.
Thanks, Gemma.
Great. And I think, your training providers will have data as well. So I think the most painful part will be starting collecting all the data and setting it up. Once you've set it up, depending on how big you want to use the tool or how small. So I think, as Lorcan and Gemma and Georgia have said, there's help here. We can help you set that up. We can help you look at your business about how you use the toolkit. We can help you sort out where that data comes from. We have produced a little guide that goes alongside the toolkit that gives you some advice around, going to payroll, getting finance involved, getting the CSR department involved. Again, as I said before, training providers, we gather a lot of data when apprentices enroll on programme. We complete, as you know, and collect lots of information through paperwork that's run through a system. So again, that can be produced in a bit of a dashboard or definitely a Power BI dashboard for you to help you sort of start off. I think a bit of advice from me would be to look at all the toolkit, highlight in red all the areas that you'd like to start with. Always start with involving some of your people that produce dashboards and Power BI, and work with them to look at that, because if you work with them whilst you're gathering the data on the areas that you want to start with, they will probably help you build a Power BI dashboard to help start building it into a much bigger tool that you can use. So thank you, Georgia.
No, I was also going to say, if there is anyone that wants to see how, you can put it together into a pack and showcase it as a business case, I'd be happy to go through what I pulled together if that's helpful, just as like a kind of end result piece. But yeah, thanks, Georgia.
No, thank you all, and thank you for those offers of onward support as well. That obviously comes from us at the ISE as well. So thank you everyone on the call today. Thank you Nicki, Gemma and Lorcan, and the Apprenticeship Working Group who've been behind the scenes as well, working towards today's delivery of this exciting tool for everyone. As I said, it will be on the website very soon, and everything from this recording and all of those tools and documents will be available to you after today's call. So thank you everyone so much, and wishing you all a great weekend when you get there.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great festive celebration. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.